Hey guys, my name is Amy, and for my project, I decided to create a lesson plan because I'm an elementary education major, and I thought this would be a cool way to implement what we've learned in class into something that I might use in the future. And so for this project, my problem was I wanted to take things that we've learned in the class and take them into the classroom, into an elementary school classroom. And so what I've wanted to do and like take from our class has kind of changed over the course of the project. But what I ended up settling on is teaching the Gantt chart and deal method and having students apply that to an experiment. So I thought the best way to kind of show what I did was to take you through my lesson plan. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so this is my lesson plan, and I thought this would be easier than just a PowerPoint because you can actually see what I would be using and like what I would have in the classroom. And so the title of this is Making Your Own Experiment. I unfortunately could not find a standard that just like fit well. And I know like learning how to like do an experiment is like part of science, but like everything was very specific, and not as general as just like learning how to create an experiment, unfortunately. But I still linked the standards there because maybe I could find something depending on what the student picked for their experiment that would apply to a standard. So the grade level I chose is fourth or fifth grade. I would personally, I think in the future I'm gonna teach like kindergarten or first grade maybe, but I thought for this lesson it'd be really cool to do it with older students because it'd be more like hands off and they would kind of just get to do they will almost like we're doing with this project, but like they would get to just use their own like creative minds and they wouldn't need like step through step like of how to complete it. They just kind of get to do their own thing. So I thought that'd be cool. And then I also was thinking about how this could be used. Science fairs are a big part of like elementary school, so I thought this could be used in a science fair possibly, and I thought that'd be really cool. So the objectives. So I have four objectives I would like the students to be able to accomplish whatever they complete this lesson. So students will understand what the deal method is and how to use it. Students will understand and create a Gantt chart. Students will use teamwork to create an experiment, and students will self-assess how effective their experiment was. So at the end of the lesson, these are the things I'd like the students to be able to accomplish and have done. And then for my assessment, there's going to be I decided to do like an informal assessment, so just kind of assessing the students throughout the entire lesson, just how they're doing their Gantt charts, experiment, and overall group work, because in this I decided I wanted them to work in groups and just like seeing how they're working as a team and taking different responsibilities and roles, and then just taking notes throughout the lesson of like who's doing what. And I guess something else I just thought of that would have been nice to have in here is maybe assigning roles in the group work. So then each person has a specific thing that they're responsible for. Like one person is maybe over like making the supply list. So just like splitting up the roles. So maybe that would be something that I'd add. So at the beginning, the focus and review are like engaged. So this is like the hook, like the introduction to what we're doing. So I would ask the question, what is an experiment? And this would just be a broad question that everyone can answer. And I found a thing from a kid's website, and it says an experiment is a carefully planned test to discover something unknown. And I really liked this because it was just very broad. It didn't use a lot of big words and just like made a lot of sense. And then the next question I would have is, have you ever done an experiment? And this would be a turn in chat question just to give different equity of access, so students have different opportunities to be involved if they didn't want to raise their hand in front of the whole class. And then I would play this video. It just would be like something to get them excited, maybe even play it as they're walking into class that day. But it's just a 5-minute video, or maybe a 4-minute video.
Let's go help people customize and save with Liberty Mutual. Okay, who sat at my desk?
Hi, I'm Dr. Neil.
Oh my goodness.
I'm Dr. Amy Spizwoko.
And Dr. Jennifer Sun.
Okay, basically it is just a video full of different experiments that are really fun. So maybe this be something they just like see to get them excited about the whole thing. Not necessarily that they be doing these experiments, but just something to get them excited. And so for the materials, just the video, and then time 8 minutes for this portion. So next is the teacher input. So just like presenting the task. So I would present the deal method and ask the questions. Anyone ever heard of the deal method or know what it stands for? And then I would introduce the deal method and what each letter then stands for. And I made this worksheet that the students would get, and they could use this to write down all their ideas as they go through each letter. So D, define the problem. E, explore all possible solutions. A, act on the best possible solution and look back on the results. So they would keep this throughout the entire experiment and just use it to jot down ideas and like what's going on currently in their experiment. Next, I would introduce the Gantt chart. So I would explain what a Gantt chart is and showing that they will use this to track their progress throughout the entire experiment. And then I would show an example. So I know my screen's tiny, but this is what I created as my example. It's really simple, but I think it's a great visual for the students. So I have different dates on here. So every day they worked on their project, their teacher allowed time for it. They would put in that date, and then if they're still working on that section, they would fill it in. So I have planning, research, design, presentation, and reflection. So this is just really simple, and I think the colors are great for elementary school. That's just a simple example of what their Gantt chart may look like. And for materials, they would need the deal method worksheet and the Gantt chart example, and then time about 12 minutes. So for the guided practice, they're going to be split into groups depending on the class size, 4 to 5 students. This also could be done individually, but I think group work is really great. So I think that's what they should do maybe. And then in their group time, they need to pick an experiment. So I actually got this book from the College of Ed a while ago, and it's 101 great experiments, and it just has a bunch of great examples, and it's really fun, and the supplies needed for them are not crazy or anything like that. So this is just a book that they could look through and have ideas, or if they have laptops in the classroom, use those. And then begin working on the deal method. So defining the D, define the problem, and then creating one Gantt chart for the whole group. I think it'd be awesome if there was poster board and they could do this on a big thing. Then creating a supply list and also just letting them know what supplies are available so they don't go too crazy, and just knowing like what you are able to get your hands on, because some things like you're just not going to be able to get. And then giving students a deadline of when it's supposed to be finished. That way they know like I have to do this by this date, and just kind of letting them have that, like pushing them in the right direction to get it done, but just letting them have that free reign there. So materials, the book, writing utensils, and poster board possibly. I said 25 minutes just so they have time to discuss and just like figure out what they want to do. And then space, room for the groups to get together. So the independent practice. So this is kind of, I thought this would be cool if students worked a little bit on this, like every single day or every like twice a week or something like that. So you could spread it out for a while, and students are excited to be able to work on their experiments. So just depending on what the class looks like, you would choose when they would work on it. And so each time they would come together, they'd work on each letter of the deal method, continuing to work on their Gantt chart, and then you need to remind them of the deadline. So materials is just kind of whatever they needed for the experiment that you are able to get, and then teacher discretion for how long. And then to finish it all up, students will present their final experiments, deal methods, and Gantt charts to the class. And the presentations can be spread out over time. So you can have like 2 experiments a day or presentations, or like 1 a week, whatever you wanted to do. And then possibly recording them, because I think it'd be cool to look back on them. But the most important, not the most important, but I think the most important is like wrapping it all up. So having these discussions. And so I put discussions in small groups, and you could just like pop around to the groups. But what I think would be really cool is having different members from different groups like put together. So like having 5 kids that were all from 5 different groups. So that way they can all have a different perspective. So the questions that just to kind of get conversation going are: how effective was your experiment? What would you have done differently? And how would you approach your next experiment? Just to get them thinking, because maybe their experiment was a total bust and did not work at all. And like instead of having a negative approach to it, maybe just like turning it into a positive, mean like, well, like now like this will push you to having a good next experiment, and you know what you would do next time. So just showing it's all part of the process, and just maybe even like hanging up the Gantt charts in the classroom afterwards. So um, I said 10 minutes for the discussion and then kind of teacher discretion for how long you want everything else to be. But these are my resources that I had, but I'll stop sharing my screen. But overall, I really enjoyed this project and creating this lesson plan. I really think this is something that I could use in the future. Um, but looking back on it, I think I wish I could have done more, like, maybe even, like, tried out an experiment just to see how it would work, but I feel like this is a really good baseline lesson plan that I can do a lot with in the future. So, yeah, thanks for listening.